Hi, and welcome back to another episode of SEO on Air. I'm your host, Aaron, and today we have Alex Whalley, Director of SEO at Tug Agency. We talk about on-site optimization techniques, content marketing practices, and the basics of PPC. I hope you enjoyed this episode. One thing I wanted to know is that you were also a director at Burp before, right? I think it's Burp, or is it BURP?
Yeah, that's right. It was Burp was basically the company that I started. It was built on the acronym of Build, Rank, Profit. So essentially, the first. So I'd been in affiliate marketing for some time, and it was my first kind of successful venture where I built out I had like 5,000 subscribers that were paying a monthly fee to essentially learn how to build microsites doing affiliate marketing, selling. Most of them were predominantly Amazon products. So it was based on the whole idea of building small sites, ranking them, and then turning a profit.
Right. And is that still going on? Or also, do you
No,
want to mention
because
this brand on the company as well?
no, it kind of came to a close because this was before a lot of the Panda and Penguin updates from Google. So a lot of the techniques that I kind of taught were very I wouldn't say black hat, but they weren't exactly white hat
Right.
SEO. And it got to a point where I was making more money from teaching people how to do it than I was from my own sites. Um,
Right.
and
Right.
unlike a lot of the personalities in that make money online niche, because I actually have a conscience, I went, you know what, I can't, in good faith, charge people for techniques that
Right.
I know are no longer working. So
Right.
as a
Right.
result, I kind of shut all
But
that down, and that, I mean, to be honest, that's kind of what started this whole journey into SEO, because it was at that point that I realized that, um, you know, buying links, spinning content in order to rank websites was no longer effective. So I had to kind of take a step back, look at the landscape, and say, what am I good at, and how can I leverage that to build a solid foundation in SEO? And obviously, that's the rest is, as they say, is history.
right. But also, what I think would be interesting in that history is when did the Hot Wheels customization start happening as well?
So yeah, funny, interesting with that. That was probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And it was completely unrelated to any kind of effort to make money. It was completely unrelated to anything with SEO. It was purely out of a joy for. I love cars. Especially love Japanese and European cars. But unlike some of those very wealthy people out there, I can't afford to fill my garage with Evos and Subaru 22Bs and Lamborghinis and stuff.
Right.
So I started collecting Hot Wheels. I've always been good at art and enjoyed being creative, so it was a natural progression from there to realize people were taking these Hot Wheels and they were cutting them up and they were repainting them and they were putting new wheels on them and essentially customizing them. So I set about trying to find out how to do it. But in order to do that, I was visiting 3 or 4 Facebook sites. I was following people on Instagram. There was no actual website or one source of truth in terms of where I could learn how to do it. So off the back of that, I went, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to build out a website called My Custom Hot Wheels, with purely the sole goal of that was to kind of catalog my journey. So every time I learned something, or every time I found a really good technique for doing something, I would share it was kind of like an online journal almost, purely a blog where I was sharing my stories and how it happened. Um, it didn't take long for me to realize that the site was attracting a lot of attention. I was
Right.
gaining a really strong following on Instagram. All of a sudden I had over 10,000 followers on Instagram. I had 50,000 unique visitors a month. And people were actually emailing me, offering tips and advice, asking if I could publish their tips. And as you know, for someone who's in the SEO and content space, there's nothing better than other people's content. So I was essentially
Right.
getting free content. I was never trying to take credit for their work. I was always sort of promoting their Instagram channel or promoting their Facebook page. But at the end of the day, as you know, because it's published on my site, I inherently got the value from that content, and it kind of grew exponentially from there.
What are some on-site optimization techniques that could really work out? And I think just to kind of give a clarification to our readers, what are some on-site optimization techniques in general?
I think the most important ones are from an access. I mean, I always break SEO down into sort of 2 or 3 areas. The first one is indexability and crawlability. So at the end of the day, how easy is it for Google to crawl your website? And more importantly, is it easy for Google and other search engines to understand the relationship that pages have with the site as a whole? So does your site architecture to support the content structure that that sits within that site? Because quite often people will just sort of publish content and rely on the CMS to automatically categorize it, or they rely on tags. One of the things I see very often is an interesting one, actually, because I'll add to this in a minute, of how Google are updating their ability to understand it. But so many sites, even huge brand sites that I've worked with in the past, have relied purely on dynamic filters to essentially to filter all their content. So they'll have a blog, and they might have, so to continue with the Hot Wheels, you might have Japanese cars as a category, you might have European cars, you might have tips and guides, you might have customizer showcases where people want to see the content relating to those particular subcategories. And what big brands tend to do is they just rely on a filter. So the URL will actually be mycustomhotwheels.com/? Search equals Japanese cars. Google is now starting to essentially identify that as the category. It can't index that page, obviously, because it's been dynamically generated, but Google is starting to identify that. But at the end of the day, the one thing John Mueller still says is, if you're choosing to use filters instead of category pages, you need to make sure there are a lot of internal links on that page in order for Google to ascertain how that page relates to other content on the site. So with that being said, I still stick to my guns and say one of the biggest things you can do is make sure that you have category pages that reflect the categories that are most important to you, and especially from a keyword search volume perspective, so that you can have a category for decals, a category for Japanese cars. More importantly, it means that URL is mycustomhotwheels.com/blog/Japanese cars. You can then optimize that page with a bit of a snippet of content saying, check out, and that's where you can do your keyword research and optimize that page and say, check out the latest articles on Japanese cars and find out the latest models from Hot Wheels in order to customize them, as well as tips and trends on, what JDM stands for, the Japanese domestic market, and all those, so there's your little snippet. It's optimized. You can then, all of that content then sits within that category. And so when someone searches Japanese cars or Japanese model cars, there's a good chance that category page will rank. Or if it's a more specific long tail search like Subaru Impreza customizing Hot Wheels, then Google sees that there's an article on customizing a Subaru, but it sits within the Japanese cars category. And that URL hierarchy and that parent to child structure makes it really easy to Google to understand that this is the content, it's related to Japanese cars, therefore it will surface on the first page of Google. That kind of also addresses accessibility, which is obviously inherently part of indexability and crawlability. And I think the most important aspect, which is, it's almost cliche because it's one of the first things I learned in SEO, is your metadata. It's your meta title, your meta description. You should only have one heading tag, H1 tag on the page. H2 and H3 should flow in a way that makes sense. So if it's a subheading, it should be H2s. If there's some subheadings within that H2, they should be H3. And it's good. It's got to make sense from that point of view. And I guess the other one that I've found really beneficial, and again, if you're using WordPress at home, you don't even have to worry about it, because WordPress, I think, automatically does this now, which is really good, especially with our Yoast SEO and other plugins like that, is schema markup. So if you've got a video on the page, especially with a YouTube video, so many of our clients have a link to their YouTube video, but they don't embed the video on their site. So they're essentially driving traffic to YouTube instead of their own site. So I say, if you've got, whether it's FAQs, whether you've got a video on the page, basically look up the schema. There's a lot of schema markup generators that will automatically do all the work for you. You just put in the information and add that JSON markup to your page, so that Google can then, for videos, your video, that URL could then potentially rank in the videos results as well, alongside YouTube. And it just means Google understands what that content is about. and it can display it in the search results.
Right. So if we take care of the indexability and let's say accessibility as well, and crawlability too, and we kind of make sure let's say the techniques that we're doing are all optimizing our website to make sure that the content is perfect for both search engines and people. How exactly do we measure our effectiveness? Like, how do we know it's actually working or not?
I think at the end of the day, you just look at metrics like site engagement. So obviously in terms of traffic numbers, it's very hard to tell. I always sort of say to my clients, take the actual traffic with a grain of salt. Once you've been doing this for a while, you can look at year-on-year traffic metrics. But when it comes to like month-on-month or quarter-on-quarter, the nature of people's search through seasonalities and changes and COVID, holidays, means that you can't really compare 1 month traffic numbers to the next, because it's the inherent nature of human beings that we have different patterns and fluctuations in what we do and how we do it. But I would definitely say things like engagement. So how many people, how many pages per visit, how long are they spending on your site? So those sort of metrics don't lie. And it doesn't matter whether you've got 100 visitors or 1,000 visitors. Those metrics look at the average for those visitors that are coming. So if you're answering the questions people are asking, you've got good internal links pointing them to other relevant pieces of content on the site, and you're addressing those things, then things like bounce rate, average time on site, and pages per session, you're going to see improvements. I think the other thing that you can do as well, which is a great KPI for measuring effectiveness of SEO for clients, is visibility. So whether it's my own custom Hot Wheels site or a client, the first thing I do before I even start building the site or working on the site is we identify what are the top 100 to 200 keywords that matter the most. What are the high converting keywords? We ignore brand. We still track brand terms, but ignoring brand, what are the keywords that relate to their products and services, relating to search intent? So once we've established those keywords, we then start tracking those keywords, and we take a benchmark and we say, all right, for the 200 keywords we're tracking, the average rank is 56 and your visibility is 7%. And then obviously we come back in 3 months' time, and what we want to show our clients, and I want to see myself, is that the average rank is now 30 and visibility is 27%. So we can say unequivocally, doesn't matter that your traffic's down. The fact is, the visibility for the keywords that matter to you guys, the average rank's increased by 15 places, and your share of voice has gone up because of the fact that rank's improved.
Is there, let's say, a reliable tool that people can use to kind of check these statistics out? Because I've heard from some people that they don't really use one tool; they have to go through like multiple tools to find like the proper average of that metric.
To be honest, I find like GA, especially now we're going to GA4. I mean, that's going into a whole nother can of worms about the deprecation of cookies. But to be honest, for someone in SEO, I just think the deprecation of third-party data is a really good thing, because it puts more onus on making sure you're driving first-party data through good content. And people are signing up to your mailing list, or they're inquiring through your site because of organic, not relying on paid ads and third-party data that's going to be irrelevant soon, although Google's been putting that off for 2 years now, so who knows. But GA4 and Universal Analytics, which soon be irrelevant, is definitely the best source of truth when it comes to all of those metrics we talked about relating to engagement and traffic. I mean, it's also good to sort of see what percentage of your traffic is organic versus direct versus referral and paid, etc. But for me, in terms of tracking keywords and benchmarking visibility, Ahrefs has always been the best tool. Some people prefer SEMrush, some people prefer Moz. Each of them have their own advantages, but as I say to my guys who work for me and to my clients, the data may not be correct in terms of the search volume or the link profiles. It may be slightly skewed, but at the end of the day, if we're using the same tool that we benchmarked with to measure our successes and failures, then it doesn't matter if that data was wrong in the first place, because it's consistent through the process. So I find when it comes to tracking keywords and looking at visibility, Ahrefs for me is the best, because we can not only track up to 5,000 keywords against the sort of account that we have, or the subscription we have, we can also obviously tag those keywords. So we identify the baskets or the themes that those keywords fall into. And then not only can we look at the overall visibility and share of voice for all of the keywords, but we can look at it on an individual category perspective. So I might say, how am I doing for all of the tips and tricks related keywords? So overall I might see a slight decline in visibility, but I can go, well, Japanese cars has declined and European cars has declined, but for my tips and tricks, we've seen an increase. And for me, they're the keywords, for example, that are going to convert and drive my customers.
In terms of, let's say, link acquisition, what are some, let's say, good strategies that we could use?
Okay, I definitely I can certainly answer that one. The first thing I'll say in terms of guest posts is, yes, I do get a lot of email inquiries about guest posting on my site. I basically say no to all of them unless, of course, they're in my area and they're fellow customizers who want to share some tips. And of course, they can publish to their heart's content, and I'll either give them access to my WordPress backend or I'll publish the article for them. But when they write to me, they make it personal. They say, I've been following you. I love the work you're doing. I'd love to share. I figured out this great tip on how to do X, Y, Z, and I feel like, I resonate with a lot of the things you talk about. I'd love to publish an article on your site. But what I get more often than not are the generic link building guest posts inquiries, where it's clearly a canned email. They haven't addressed me by name. They say, dear website owner. They suggest topics that are completely unrelated to me. So I guess the takeaway there, I say to people, is guest posting is a very effective. It's still, it's not as effective as it was 10 years ago, but it's still a very effective way to not only get backlinks, but essentially capture an audience from a site that's, got a like-minded subset of users to you. But please, if you're going to write to the website owner, go so far as to it's not that hard to find their name. They usually write their own content. So it usually says, by Alex, or by whoever they are, by Aaron. So go, hey, Aaron, been reading your stuff for a while. A trick I always say to my guys as well is, even if you're not reading their stuff, just go 4 or 5 articles back, because everyone goes to the most recent one. Read through the article and find something that resonates with you and quote that back to them and say, I really love this article. I loved especially how you said XYZ. I guarantee you, if you say that after you've used their name, you've got their attention.
I'm thinking more of like different content channels that you can push out your content, let's say on your website versus your social media, and how exactly you can push each one and get your, let's say, viewership higher that way.
That's an interesting one, because I think with video, it's definitely important to treat your videos very similar to how you treat your content. And in that when you're publishing a video on YouTube, you want to make sure that your description is well optimized. The first part of that description actually promises exactly what people are going to get. Gone are the days when you do the clickbaity sort of titles to drive traffic without actually answering the question. It's like literally here's 7 ways to, help your child study for their HSC, or help them study for get into college, and you want to make sure, the video can be as long-winded as you want, but the description needs to address exactly what they're going to get early on. In terms of the video side of things, I also always recommend you actually embed that video on your page so that people can view the video on your page instead of going to YouTube. They can still obviously view on YouTube, but you're improving your engagement metrics, which is an SEO, which is a big tick for SEO. Google looks at the engagement of people on your site to see the relevance of it based on the search query that drove them to there. Then, of course, you've got the schema markup abilities as well. In terms of the social channel, though, I think that is a tough one, because we're now in an age of influencers. And dare I say this, I think influencers are the worst thing that's ever happened to society. The sort of content that's being produced, the TikTok challenges, the absolute, people basically think it's really funny to do videos where they go and annoy people and see the response. People don't care. It's like that recent fella in the UK who's been taken to court for going into people's houses, and he recently went into the train, scared all the commuters by stopping the train. And he even said to the paper, he said, I don't care that the reaction is negative. All I'm after is a reaction. So I think when you're targeting social channels, the fact that you've got to compete with all that that white noise, I call it red noise because it's damaging. It adds an interesting conundrum to the process. And I think at the end of the day, that's why it's more important to go back to the Hot Wheels example. It's more important to build a brand, build a following purely based on delivering valuable content, not with the intent to make money, just purely with the intent to teach and share your passion. Once you've built that up on your site, you then create a Facebook and an Instagram profile. And then, of course, people come to your channel specifically because they want to consume your content. If you tried to do this, if I tried to start my custom Hot Wheels via Facebook, for example, and then bring it across to my website, it wouldn't have worked because no one knows what value I'm adding. There's a lot of white noise there. I'm kind of competing against people that you might search Hot Wheels and there's a guy who's basically going around the streets throwing Hot Wheels at people to get a reaction. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
So I'd say, just be wary of the fact that I think you should build your brand, show your inherent value through content on your own website or even on YouTube, before you then decide to then branch out and leverage that content across multiple channels.
To kind of dial back a bit, with all the white noise and red noise of influencers, what are your thoughts then on affiliate marketing now in 2023?
I mean, I think there's still a place for it. There's always a place for it. It's actually a very effective marketing channel, especially for a lot of businesses when they're like, well, why would I spend all the money promoting my business when I can pay you 30 to 50% of the revenue and you've already got a following of 100,000 people, or, I've got 20,000 people out there marketing the absolute crap out of my brand and I'm still making a profit. So if I'm making 80% profit, I'm happy to give 40% of that profit away. If it means I'm I'm making 10,000 more sales a week. I'm spending way less on marketing because they're spending all their money on the marketing. So I think there's still a place for it. And hey, if you've got, I see it all the time. I see products that I know are available at AliExpress for $8. And I see the big ads on Facebook with the guys have built out a page. They've already got a following. So they've got, 100,000 likes and hundreds of comments from people, and they're selling this product for $49.95 with free shipping. I say all the power to them. If anything, I'm jealous that I didn't think of doing that first because I know they're making thousands of sales. They're making $40 every sale. I know that's probably more of a drop shipping model, but I think it can all kind of be basted into the same area. The point is, you're selling a product that is not yours. You're just doing it through promotion. And if you choose social media as your channel, or you choose your own website, or even eBay, whatever it might be, all the power to you. So I think it just adds to the noise. But I think again, it comes down to, even if I'm selling, so I actually drop ship a few products, but I choose products that are related purely to dioramas or to 1/64 scale model building or anything to do with the model industry. I look at them and go, I see them on AliExpress and go, you know what? I've already built up a following based on sharing my passion and value. Because of that, I've now got the opportunity to branch out and sell products that aren't mine. So to do drop shipping, or there might be an affiliate offer for, some Hot Wheels coloring book or something like that. I mean, there isn't anything like that, but the example is once you've built your brand based on whatever products or services you offer, there's always the ability to sort of then, and unfortunately you just then in those cases you are competing against those people in that space.
In terms of, let's say, YouTube ads, how different is the research that goes into creating a perfect YouTube ad when you're comparing it to, let's say, a PPC campaign?
I think it comes down to I prefer the YouTube side of things because you don't need, like, someone with no SEO or digital marketing experience could create the perfect YouTube ad straight away. But if you've got no experience in digital marketing or SEO and don't understand keywords and negative keywords and broad match and phrase match and all of that stuff that goes with PPC campaigns, you can spend $50 in half an hour and get no leads. You could be sort of marketing for, a red polar fleece and accidentally target the word red and polar. So all of a sudden you got people who are interested in bipolar or red hats, your ads coming up and it's not targeted, and as soon as your ad appears, you're paying as well. But with YouTube ads, it's all about creativity. If you can create a really good video, I think the only important part of any YouTube ad is to make sure that within the first 15 seconds of the ad, your brand, or at least your URL, appears, because it's all about brand awareness for those ones. Like my ads on YouTube are literally just mycustomhotwheels.com with my logo, and then a video with some really cool music, which I actually got made on Fiverr, because I don't have any editing skills, where I've sent the guy 20 photos of my really nice customs taken by a mate who's a professional photographer, with some cool music in the background and some cool overlays and filtering effects transitioning the photos. There's nothing else. There's no special offer today. There's no talking over. There's no writing on the screen. It's just mycustomhotwheels.com. Here's some cool pictures. And because I'm targeting people that are interested in customizing cars or interested in cars full stop, the hope is obviously they'll go, I want to see more of that. That's really cool.
So in kind of, this might be a big ask as well, but in all of the topics that we have spoken about in terms of optimizing your content, in terms of getting like kind of links as well, um, developing content to hit different regions and areas, international market, PPC as well, and YouTube ads too. In what area can, let's say, AI help out? And I think the answer might be in all of them, but I want to know your take on that.
Yeah, AI can definitely help in all of them. We've been experimenting with AI using Notion AI as well as ChatGPT, to not only, obviously the most obvious one is creating content. When it comes to guest posting opportunities that we touched on earlier, I think especially for our clients, we utilize ChatGPT and Notion to write the content and maybe then spend 15 minutes adding our own thoughts, adding a few authority outbound links to authoritative sites to sort of reference, maybe a university sort of white paper or a Wikipedia entry to sort of confirm whatever the topic is. When it comes to writing content for our actual clients, we still use AI to create the initial piece of content, because quite often what we used to do, and I still say this to anyone, I still do it myself, is probably one of the most important things you can do when you're writing SEO content is to look at those people also ask questions in Google. So those related questions that people are asking should at least two of those questions should be subheadings within your piece of content, and it should be optimized for featured snippets. But we're going off track. But the point is, those sorts of questions are really important. What I've found now is ChatGPT will pull in all those questions naturally when writing the content. And so what it does is it creates a really good framework for how the content should look. Introduction, what's the body look like? We may end up stripping 75% of that content out so that it doesn't get, it passes an AI checker. But the point is, like writing any piece of content, it's getting started that is the hardest part. And so AI does a really good job of, basically minimizing the amount of time you spend on figuring out what story am I telling, what's the direction this article's going, how's it going to flow. And once we've done that, we then add the other stuff. The other thing that AI does really well is, I talked earlier about this keyword themes and baskets, so that when you're tracking keywords, you tag them accordingly. Whenever we're doing it ourselves, I always say to my guys, the first thing you should do is look at the navigation menu on the client site. That should forms the backbone or the skeleton for your themes. So their themes are, toilets, no call out fee, whatever all those things are, like we talked about, or to go back to the custom Hot Wheels, Japanese cars, European cars, tips and tricks, your customs. That's your framework. But then what you do is you actually put in that information into ChatGPT as well as a few keywords and say, can you help me basically build this out into some framework? ChatGPT is really good for then identifying sub themes and parent subcategories for all of those keywords as well. So it is certainly streamlining a lot of the processes that go on in the back end with SEO in terms of the other thing we've started using it for as well is writing really good meta descriptions. We used to obviously rely on purely looking at the content. We know that it should be around 160 characters. We know that meta description's job isn't to stuff full of keywords, but to increase that click through for organic results in Google. But what we've been finding is you put in the content into ChatGPT and you say, please write me a meta description for this content. it will actually crawl through all that content in about 3 seconds, write better. I mean, I consider myself an avid writer. I think I'm very good at writing, not just meta descriptions, but actual content. But even ChatGPT does a better job than I possibly could in terms of quickly writing that meta description, and optimizing it for clicks. So yeah, it's definitely been, it's a tool that I think the one thing we need to keep in mind is that if everyone starts using it, we are going to get to a point like we were 8 years ago, where a lot of the content is very similar in nature because people are purely relying on AI. So I think the one takeaway there is if you continue to use your own experience, your own knowledge, and your own understanding of search intent, seasonality, and all the things we've discussed when crafting content, and you use AI purely to help you with the skeleton, the framework for that, you're actually going to be in a better position. So, we didn't chat on this call, but we chatted earlier about how when the first Panda and Penguin updates came through, all of my dodgy sites lost their rankings because they were built with spun content and bad backlinks. And all the people who were there genuinely providing value suddenly found themselves on the first page of Google. I think that's going to happen again in about a year's time. Everyone who's relying on AI is suddenly, Google's going to get wise to it. There's going to be an algorithm update in a year's time. They're going to call it Godzilla or something because it's going to eat up all of the AI. And you, meanwhile, have been only using AI to build the skeletons, but you've been providing the inherent value. You understand the intent, you understand the seasonality, you understand your audience, and you want to add value. Guess what? You're going to suddenly be on page one because Google's going to punish all those people who are relying 75 to 100% on AI.
If Google does kind of hammer down on these sites that are mainly using AI and AI generative tools in general, how exactly will they kind of determine who gets the higher rank if everyone's using the same kind of SEO optimized prompt, let's say?
Again, I think that's going to come back to domain authority and backlinks. At the end of the day, whenever I'm explaining backlinks to someone who doesn't understand it, I always say Google's basically Google doesn't want to get involved. Backlinks are like a voting system. The president who wins is the president who has the most votes. And like in any slightly corrupt system, which is all around the world, there are certain votes from people who with authority that kind of count more than others. And that's exactly what backlinks are. If Google's going to look at that content and they're both the same, Google's going to say, this site's got 100 backlinks and 20 of those are from sites that we know and trust. Therefore, I'm going to rank that content higher than the other one because they've got 200 backlinks and they're all from sites that I've got no idea about and they're not relevant to the topic. So at the end of the day, high quality, relevant backlinks from authoritative sites are always going to be an important metric in SEO. And I think that's what it's going to come back to. Like we talked about how backlinks now in 2023 are certainly not as important as they were, in 2010, and content and search intent and adding value is more important. But at the end of the day, when everything is equal, backlinks are going to be the metric that Google looks at to determine if your site should sit higher than the other.
And then one question would be for that is, can AI help in that field as well in terms of helping you acquire backlinks or at least figure out what kind of backlinks to acquire?
It definitely, I mean, this one part we haven't actually looked at doing yet, but we certainly have, we've got a lot of documents that we've put together in our agency that essentially shows any new starter how to do prospecting and how to do outreaching. And that involves a combination of how to use the keywords research tool in Ahrefs to identify content that has backlinks, how to find broken links, how to find relink opportunities, all of these different methods we've discussed. There are ways in Ahrefs, once you know the process, to actually go about identifying those links. And then once you've identified that list of prospects, you then need to write, we have templates that have to be obviously modified for each site, but we have general templates for, is this a niche edit? Are we adding a snippet of information with a backlink? Is this a relink? Is this a broken link? Is it whatever the link opportunity is? We've got a template that works for that. And then, of course, the guys have to then modify that template because, as I said, we don't want to send out any Dear Webmaster. So we modify them to, get their attention and show that we actually want to add value. and it's not just for the sake of a link. We know it is for a link, but at the end of the day, they're not going to give us one unless we can show we're adding value. So yeah, AI will definitely streamline the whole process of not only identifying the link opportunities through Ahrefs or SEMrush or whatever tool you use, but also in helping to clean up and individualize all of those templates. So you could feed in the template and say, here's a template for a niche edit. Here's the list of websites. Can you please make each one unique to the particular webmaster and website and piece of content that we're trying to get a link from?
And I want to know who exactly is having like the issue with AI content that you need to put it through a content AI detecting tool.
Well, I know our clients now put the content that we send them through the AI detecting tool because obviously they're paying us to deliver content to them. And so fair enough. And I've also seen, because obviously you look at the same sort of threads and sites regarding AI and ChatGPT and stuff. I know there's been a lot of issues actually where college professors and university teachers and even high school teachers have basically been running all of their students' essays and exam work through AI. Because I've seen a lot of cases where guys are saying, "What do I do? I wrote this myself, but my professor's come back and said he's failing me because it failed the AI test." So I think that in itself adds that moral dilemma of, how can you prove, like it's easy to prove if you didn't do something, but they say you did, it's easy to prove you didn't. But on the flip side, if you didn't do something they're saying you did, it's hard to, how do you prove that you actually wrote it yourself? If it's, I mean, that it just poses a question, is the AI detection tool actually correct? Because someone actually, I think someone on that
I feel
test.
like a lot of times. Yeah. 3 books that you would recommend our viewers and listeners?
I would recommend, one book I definitely recommend is It by Stephen King. I think we've all seen the movie. If you've seen the movie and then you read the book, you're in a really good place. If, like me, you read the book before you saw the movie, you'll spend the whole time going, this is a horrible movie. I mean, I think that's the case with any book. They can never really cover it, but it's a really fantastic book. It's not actually a scary book at all. Not like a lot of Stephen King's books. It's more just really interesting. The other one I would recommend is any book by, I shouldn't admit this because it's a bit of a garbage, but I absolutely love Lee Child and his character Jack Reacher. So he's written about 20, I think there's about 29 Jack Reacher books, and I've read about 18 of them, and now some of them are worse than others, but overall they're all good page turners. I would recommend, and this is where I'm going into tin hat conspiracy areas, is Fingerprints of the Gods by Graham Hancock.
Thanks so much, Alex, for this chat. I've learned quite a bit. I've also kind of, you've piqued my interest in terms of conspiracies a bit more than what it was before. But if anything, you've taught me a lot more than what I've actually already learned in terms of SEO and content. So for that, thank you for that.
My pleasure, Aaron. Thank you for allowing me to chat with you today.
And hopefully we can continue this chat on the second episode, maybe in the future.
Yeah, definitely. There's always more to discuss, and more conspiracy theories as well.
All right, looking forward to it. Thanks for watching that episode. I hope you enjoyed. For more videos like this, make sure you like and subscribe.